Welcome back to the channel. We're talking about how to catch white sea bass. This is part 2. In part 1, Anthony talked about tackle as well as rod and reels and just an introduction to what white sea bass fishing is. So if you haven't seen that video yet, go ahead and check that one out before you come to this one. This one we're going to be talking about rigging. So it's going to be a little bit more practical, and I'm going to ask Anthony to break down how to do some basic rigging, and we can talk about technique when it comes to targeting white sea bass. Why don't we start off with line? What kind of line is ideal for white sea bass fishing?
Line is a lot less important, believe it or not. As tough as they could be to bite, to get to bite sometimes, you don't need to go crazy on your line. One of the lines that I like using is by Seagar. They have their Inshore fluorocarbon, and it's not because it's a fluorocarbon that I would like to use it, because it's less visible. I like to use it because there's one, no stretch, and two, it has a very high abrasion resistance. So if you're fishing close to some rocks and you hook a bigger fish and he drags it across there, a lot harder to break off. You'll hear the guys tell you that the line does not matter. They'll eat, when they want to eat, they want to eat. They'll eat 80 pound, they'll eat 100 pound. When they come swimming through, it doesn't matter what you drop down, they're typically not line shy. That being said, during the day when the sun's up and you're fishing that first part of the day, there's definitely times where I'll drop down to a 30 pound fluorocarbon and just try to give myself every opportunity possible to try to get that fish. So I don't know that it actually helps, but it is something that, at least for me, you'll see me tying it on and just giving myself every little advantage I can to try to capitalize on one of those fish. At night, I definitely recommend go big. They're not line shy. And also, one of the benefits of going with a stiffer line, a heavier line, is that it will help keep you from getting tangled up with those squid. We've all fished with, or most of us have fished with squid. If you fish for white sea bass, you will fish with squid, and you will find out that they can definitely tangle stuff up pretty good. So definitely that stiffer line is really nice to help prevent the tangles and the line issues that come with the tangles. I typically use 50 pound test, especially in the dark. And then, like I mentioned, I'll drop down to 30 or 40 based on the size of the sea bass we've been seeing all day, where we're fishing. If we're fishing a lot of sandy beaches, I'll go down to the 30 comfortably. If I know we're fishing areas with a lot of jagged rocks, I'll stay in the 40 or the 50. The mono, right, if you want to use mono, there's a lot of really good options out there. Berkley Big Game, Iserline First String. They're two of the ones that pop into my head as like just being some of the better monos for doing the white sea bass. Right here, I grabbed some Iserline just for the demo, but definitely the Berkley Big Game and the Iserline First String are two of my normal go-tos for this white sea bass fishery.
Sounds like you're just describing ghosts. When they're around and they want to eat, it seems really easy. Other times they seem super impossible. So
yep, that's it. They definitely have a mind of their own, and when they want to bite, I mean, we've sat there with our trolling setups at night, anchored up at Clemente, coming in from tuna. Maybe it's a little windy, and set our trolling setups out, and we've caught them on 100 pound. It really is not a line issue. When they want to eat, they just want to eat. So it's just being there when they want to eat.
Sounds good.
So yeah, we're gonna go over the dropper loop real quick, and definitely with the white sea bass dropper loop, that's definitely one of the biggest questions we get is how big of a dropper loop to do. It's definitely different than your standard rockfish dropper loop. So we just want to make sure that we, when you guys are going out there, you have a pretty good understanding on what to do and how to adjust it. I start off with, a good leader. I fold the line over and give myself a couple feet, and I'm just going to tie a surgeon's knot. That's just going to be basically an overhand knot, and then you're going to run the tag end through 3 times. Really simple knot. Wet your knot, cinch it down. You have a nice clean knot. Now, if you want to tie your dropper loop a little bit longer and then tie off to your hook, you can leave it doubled up and then tie just a regular San Diego or a uni knot or whatever your favorite knot is. Whatever you tie the best is the best knot for you. So stick with that knot. Whatever that knot is, the line will just be doubled up and you can make that knot. Or one of the things that I like to do is, after I tie my dropper loop, is to then take my dikes and cut one of the legs. I always leave plenty of tag end on there. That way it's extra secure. It's more of a peace of mind thing. It's not really as functional. You can cut as close to the knot as you want, but I typically leave a little bit of that leg on there. And now you can see I have a length that's about 3 feet. I'll then just tie a regular San Diego knot off to that, or your polymer or whatever knot, your uni knot, whatever knot you're comfortable with, tie that to your hook, and you'll end up with one about a couple feet long. This dropper loop, and Benji will get your help demoing this.
The model.
That's it.
That's my function in the show.
Depending upon where you're fishing, it's really, really beneficial to talk to the crew. Some of the crew will tell you they want to see a 4 foot, 5 foot, even up to a 6 foot tall dropper loop. So from the bottom where you make your surgeon's loop to loop your sinker on to where you make your connection is going to be anywhere from 4 foot to 6 foot, typically high enough off the bottom so that squid can drift around in that current up high off the bottom. That's going to do 2 things for us. As those sea bass are cruising around, it's going to have that squid staying in their face, and it is also going to help keep that squid off the bottom so you're not getting a lot of bat rays. The squid beds are typically out in the mud. As you can imagine, everything in the ocean eats squid. So the stingrays and the sand sharks and all the other little fish that want to follow them around that we really don't want to catch, they're all going to be down there with the squid. So we want to stay just above them where the white sea bass are. And by keeping our dropper loop about 5 feet, for this video, I'm putting it just about 5 feet right here, and then our tag end coming out. If we get in a scenario where there's a lot less current, what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim back. So we'll trim it down to about a foot, maybe even 18 inches. That way our squid's not tangling up on the main line every time. That's gonna be when there's less current. If there's more current, you can get away with the longer leader. That'll let that squid sway in that current a lot more naturally. So definitely a good technique. And then just adjust. I usually start long and adjust. If I bring it up and it's all tangled up and mangled, I'll cut my hook off, I'll retie real quick, put a fresh squid on and drop it back down. So this is probably the biggest question we get. A lot of guys go out there and they think just regular dropper loop, we're rigging up for rockfish, but we're only doing it with one hook. This is a whole different rig. We really want to have, a longer leader here, tie off to the hook versus just looping it on. That's why I cut one leg here, and that gives it so it's a little bit softer and it lets that squid move a little bit more naturally. For the weight, you're just doing a simple surgeon's knot. So it really is a very easy rig to tie. Even if you're not good with knots, even if your hands are a little stiff, it is a very easy rig to tie. And if you're not sure or you're not comfortable, always recommend asking the crew for help. They will tie the knots, they will make sure it's the right length, and they will put you on those fish. But for your sinker, I typically just do the surgeon's loop, run it through twice. It's just my sinker rig, so I'm not as worried about running it through that third time. I just do it twice real quick. Trim off the tag end. If I'm fishing areas where I know there's going to be some opportunities at snag, or if I'm not sure, what I don't like to do is snag the bottom and then sit there and fight with my smaller reels on really heavy line. So what I also do is I typically just do a simple overhand knot right above my sinker. That creates a weak spot in the line. That way it breaks off a lot easier than the main line. So I'll get the rest of my rig back. I could quickly tie another dropper loop or another surgeon's loop down here for my weight and get right back to fishing without having to redo the whole rig. You can also tie it where some of the guys will set it up with a swivel and they'll run just a lighter line down to their sinker, and then they'll have the heavier line going out to the hook.
So this is actually really eye-opening for me, because when I hear dropper loop, I'm just thinking rockfish. But rockfish is going to be much shorter. It's going to be closer to the bottom. You want it closer to the bottom. This is significantly like 5 feet, and like this far out off the line is pretty eye-opening for me. But that's for bigger game, for white sea bass. Would you say that if you're fishing for yellowtail on the bottom, this would apply too, or? You
can use the same setup. Usually on the yellowtail, I'll do a longer leader, tie off to the hook, but I'll usually have it a lot closer to the bottom.
To the bottom.
I might be 3 feet off the bottom. A lot of the times when I'm fishing yellowtail, I'm not fishing them in the mud where there's a lot of the stingrays and bat rays and stuff. Yeah. I'm fishing more structure, so I could definitely get a little closer to the bottom. And a big portion of this is because we're just trying to stay away from that bycatch.
Got it.